up at the night sky, and your brain quietly lies to you. It shows you a simple picture. There are so many stars, so many planets, so many chances, that of course there must be other intelligent beings out there. Somewhere, someone must be building cities, transmitting signals, worrying about their own future the way you worry about yours. It feels obvious, almost comforting. But what if that feeling is wrong? What if, when you look at the problem the way a physicist like Richard Feynman would, the numbers and the history and the evidence all whisper a very different story, a story where intelligent life is not just rare, but almost impossible? In this video, I want to walk you through that possibility very slowly and very honestly. No sci-fi sugarcoating. No, they are definitely out there watching us. Just a clear look at what we actually know about stars, planets, life, evolution, and the huge, uncomfortable silence around us. By the time we are done, two things might happen. First, your idea of how common intelligent life is may collapse. Second, and more important, your idea of how much your own life matters in this universe may change completely. Let's begin with the question that started all of this. If intelligent life is not basically impossible, then where is everybody? Imagine the Milky Way as a huge city viewed from far above at night. Every star is like a streetlight. There are hundreds of billions of those lights. Around many of those lights, there are planets. From our modern surveys, we know that planets are not rare, special things. They are normal, almost boring. If even a small fraction of those planets are warm, have water, and stay stable for a long time, it seems natural to think that life should spring up over and over again, like weeds in the cracks of a sidewalk. From that simple picture, many people jump to a louder claim. If life is common and evolution is powerful, then intelligence should be common too, and the galaxy should be full of minds far older and smarter than ours. That was the worry behind the famous question by Enrico Fermi at Los Alamos, when he asked his friends at lunch, "Where is everybody?" If there are many civilizations, especially ones millions of years ahead of us, then they have had more than enough time to spread, to send probes, to build enormous, visible structures, to flood the galaxy with signals. Our telescopes should see something that clearly looks artificial. Our radio dishes should sometimes catch a pattern that cannot be natural. Instead, what we see is nothing. The sky looks empty of technology. Radio telescopes hear mostly natural noise. When we search for megastructures or obvious signs of huge engineering projects, we don't find them. The cosmic city looks dark and quiet. This mismatch between the galaxy should be noisy and crowded and the galaxy seems silent and empty is called the Fermi paradox. There are many possible answers, but today we are going to explore one of the most brutal ones. Maybe our starting assumption was wrong. Maybe intelligent life is not a natural outcome of physics and chemistry. Maybe it is a freak accident that almost never happens, even when planets and simple life are common. To understand that, we have to stop staring at the sky for a moment and look down at the ground under our feet. Earth is the only planet where we know the history of life in detail, and that history tells a very strange story. Take the entire 4.5 billion year history of Earth and squeeze it into a single day, a 24-hour clock. At midnight, the planet forms from dust and rock. For hours, there is only fire, impact, chaos. Somewhere in the early morning, the first simple life appears. Tiny cells in the ancient oceans. That might sound like life appears easily, but remember, we still do not know exactly how non-living chemistry crossed the gap into self-replicating cells. That first step is already a huge question mark. Now fast forward through this imaginary day. From maybe 4 a.m. until late in the evening, almost nothing exciting happens on the surface. There is life, but it is microscopic. No trees, no fish, no dinosaurs, no humans. For most of Earth's day, the planet is a world of bacteria and other single-celled organisms, slowly changing the atmosphere and the oceans. Only very late, around 9 or 10 p.m. on this clock, do complex animals with bodies, eyes and nervous systems appear. And the kind of intelligence that can build telescopes and computers and space probes. That shows up in the last fraction of a second before midnight. All of human history, all of your worries and dreams and plans happen in that tiny sliver at the end. When you see the timeline that way, the idea that life leads naturally to intelligence starts to look naive. For almost the entire history of a very lucky planet, there were no thinking brains as we know them, only simple cells and then simple animals. If intelligence were easy, it would have appeared earlier and more often. Instead, it appears once, very late, in one lineage among millions. That should already make you suspicious of the idea that the universe is packed with minds. So what went right for Earth, and how unlikely were those steps? First, the planet had to land in a just right zone around a stable star, not too hot, not too cold, so that liquid water could exist for billions of years. The planet had to be big enough to hold onto an atmosphere, but not so big that its crust locked solid and nothing moved. It needed a protective magnetic field, which depends on the internal structure of the planet. It likely benefited from having a large moon that helps stabilize its tilt and seasons, and that is just the setup. Then, somehow, chemistry had to assemble a system that could copy itself with errors and be shaped by natural selection. Maybe that is common. Maybe chemistry just does this kind of trick whenever the conditions are right. Or maybe Earth got very lucky very early. We do not know because we only have this one example. What we do know is that once simple life appeared, it stayed simple for an incredibly long time. For billions of years, evolution was not pushing toward intelligence. It was exploring bacteria, algae, and simple organisms that do perfectly well without big brains. Later, Earth's atmosphere went through a dramatic change called the Great Oxidation. Tiny organisms that did photosynthesis started releasing oxygen as a waste product. At first, this oxygen reacted with iron in the oceans, creating huge rusty deposits we can still see in rocks today. Once the iron was used up, oxygen began to build up in the air. For many existing life forms, this was poisonous. It triggered mass die-offs, but oxygen also made a new kind of high-energy metabolism possible, giving future cells much more fuel per molecule of food. That extra energy is one of the reasons complex multicellular life can exist at all. Even then, the planet almost stayed stuck. Oxygen levels rose and fell. There were long periods where not much changed. At least once, maybe more than once, the planet entered a snowball Earth state, with ice reaching nearly from pole to pole. Life barely held on in cracks and thin zones of survival. Only after these crises did conditions finally stabilize in a way that allowed what we call the Cambrian explosion. Many kinds of animals appearing in a relatively short geological period, with new body plans, eyes, nervous systems, and complex interactions like predation. None of this looks like a smooth, inevitable road toward intelligence. It looks like a series of sharp cliffs, narrow bridges, and lucky escapes. Change a few details and Earth could still be a planet covered in microbes, with no plants, no animals, and certainly no humans. In that alternate timeline, the universe would still contain life, but there would be no one here to ask whether intelligent life is common, and we still have not reached the hardest part. Complex animals do not automatically evolve human-style intelligence. Evolution is not a story that has smart monkeys with podcasts as its natural destination. Evolution only cares about one thing, what survives and reproduces in a given environment. To be a successful shark or a successful tree, you do not need to understand the laws of physics. You do not need to reflect on the meaning of existence. You just need to eat, avoid being eaten, and pass on your genes. Dinosaurs are a perfect example. They dominated Earth's land ecosystems for more than 150 million years, far longer than humans have been around. They were diverse, well adapted, and many of them had decent brains for what they needed to do. Yet in all that time, none of them built radios, telescopes, or rockets. They did not form technological civilizations. Their evolutionary goal, if you can call it that, was not intelligence, it was survival in their niches. Big brains are expensive, energetically and in developmental time. Brains consume a huge amount of energy relative to their mass. For most species in most environments, that cost is not worth it. On Earth, only one branch of the tree of life went fully into extreme intelligence, our own lineage. There are other smart animals. Crows can solve puzzles. Dolphins show complex communication. Octopuses display surprising problem-solving, but none of them invented metalworking, electricity, or digital communication. Even on a planet where complex life thrives, the step from clever animal to technological civilization seems to be taken rarely, maybe once. If that is a general pattern, then the fraction of planets with life that ever develop anything like our level of intelligence could be tiny. Now, instead of getting lost in words, think like Feynman would and turn this into a simple picture. Imagine every habitable planet in the galaxy as a ticket in a cosmic lottery. The jackpot is not just life. The jackpot is a species that can ask, "Are we alone?" and actually build tools to search for an answer. The universe hands out billions of tickets in the form of rocky planets in the right temperature zones. But if the chance that any one ticket hits the jackpot is unbelievably small, then a universe with many planets can still end up with almost no winners. This is the heart of the argument that intelligent life might be basically impossible in practice. Not impossible in the sense of violating any law of physics, but impossible in the sense that it almost never happens. A probability can be technically non-zero and still be so small that it may as well be zero when you look at realistic numbers. If the odds are 1 in a trillion for any given planet, then having billions of planets does not help you very much. At this point, you might be thinking, okay, but the universe is huge. Doesn't that size save us? With so many galaxies, so many stars, surely someone else must exist. This is where our intuition fights with math. Big numbers of tries do help, but only if the underlying probability is not too insanely small. Winning the lottery becomes more likely if you buy many tickets, but if the game is impossible enough, you can buy a mountain of tickets and still almost certainly lose. The problem is that we do not know the odds for intelligence. They could be comfortably small, or they could be absurdly tiny. So what does the silence of the sky add to this? For about 60 years, humans have been using radio telescopes to listen for signals that might come from other civilizations. Our searches are still limited. We have not scanned every frequency, every patch of sky, all of the time. In fact, compared to the size of the galaxy, our search effort so far is like taking one glass of water from the ocean and checking for fish. Still, if the galaxy were crowded with loud, advanced civilizations, broadcasting powerful signals in every direction, it is reasonable to think we might have stumbled across something by now. The fact that we have not is a small hint that either intelligence is rare, or most civilizations are quiet, or they do not use the kinds of signals we expect, or they do not